You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network. Visit bpn.fm to discover more.
Hello, I'm Jesse McAnally.
And I am Andrew DeWolf.
And I'm Liz Eston.
And welcome to Musicals with Cheese, a podcast where I try to get Andrew and Liz to like musical theater. And you know what? Let's just invite our honorary other host. You know him. If you're listening to this show, you know Brent Black.
Jess 2.0?
It is, I mean, better Jess is what I'd call him.
Better Jess.
Better
okay.
Jess.
I mean, I agree.
Better Jess.
Musical theater aficionado, brilliant composer in his own right, and probably it has to be our most guested and our first guest on this podcast ever, Brent Black,
It's true.
a.k.a. Brentalfoss.
Well, it's so nice to be here. Don't forget, I was also the first guest to invite myself on. So, you know.
Someone else has done that since, though. Laura Crow invited
Yeah.
herself on. So you're not...
That's amazing. I just hung out with Laura at MagFest a weekend or two ago. That's great.
She is lovely, and you are as well, so it's good when lovely people meet. I will say, you are the first one to lose at trivia to me, and I have remained undefeated since.
Now, here's the
Undefeated?
thing. Here's the thing. When two people prepare trivia questions for each other, do we talk about this every time? I didn't want to be such a hard ass, because what kind of jerk would show up and be like, my trivia questions are really hard, so I'll win. So I made them
Just
kind
rigged the
of
fucking
easy.
game.
I
He
did
will not shut up
not.
about it.
Literally, one of the questions I asked Brent was, what is the main character in Wicked's name?
And it was okay, fine. Well, one day perhaps. Oh wait, no, you.
We did it again, and I still won the second time.
That's true. Listen, you're that kind of nerd. If you were into baseball, you'd know the stats, whereas I would be, on the field. You know what I'm saying? It's just different.
Mm-hmm. And like most musical theater people, I know nothing about baseball. Watch Damn Yankees
Yeah, he did.
to
They've
know
got
more.
heart.
Brent, ever since I first talked to you, all those 5 years ago,
Damn.
half a decade ago, you have brought up your deep love for this musical. So the minute I heard that this was coming to Broadway, which is a fucking weird musical to come to Broadway, and I think you'll agree with me.
yes.
I knew you had to come on and we had to talk in depth about this. Today, we are talking about Gutenberg, the musical. Cue the music.
Schlimmer, my lovely Schlimmer, you are the best darn town in Germany. Gutenberg, 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 Gutenberg. I'm the pride of Schlimmer. 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 I am Gutenberg.
Gutenberg the Musical was written by Scott Brown and Anthony King, with music and lyrics by Brown and King as well. The piece concerns two earnest but clueless theater composers who present a highly inaccurate musical about the life of Johannes Gutenberg to potential investors. The original Broadway production began previews on September 15, 2023, and officially opened on October 12th as a limited run that played its final performance on January 28, 2024. The overall plot is it's a story of two best pals named Bud and Doug who put on a show together because they just love each other so damn much. It's art imitating life, imitating art. And it's the funniest thing to come to Broadway since 1448, which is the year the printing press was invented by Johannes Gutenberg, who is the subject of the musical that Bud and Doug write. But that's not important right now. That is the official playbill description. So, Brent, what is your history with the show? Because I know it goes back.
Well, my history is so robust that I know the playbill thing was wrong because only one of them is a composer. Not
But they
two
both wrote the
composers,
lyrics.
Bud and Doug. Yeah, that's right. My history is I was taken along to see the second cast of the show, which still had Jeremy Shamus in 2007, the off-Broadway version, but no longer had Christopher Fitzgerald. But then later I got a boot. And let me be honest, when I first saw it, it took me a second to get into it because I was judging it as a piece of crafted musical theater and not for what it was really doing. But when I listened to the bootleg of Jeremy Shamus and Christopher Fitzgerald, no shade to Fitzgerald's replacement, but I've listened to that bootleg. I mean, just like if it was 100 times over the last 15 years, I wouldn't be surprised. And so, you know, it stuck with me. And even though, I mean, look, it's a problematic fave because a lot of the jokes don't age well, which we will touch back on.
Mm-hmm.
But I have often said it's my favorite musical, mostly because nobody knows about it. So it's more convenient than like Gypsy. Now let's fight about it. So yeah. And to put a bow on it, I think that it definitely influenced my off-Broadway show Con because it's got two people that aren't maybe the best actors and haven't written the best show, but they're very earnestly putting their own show on, which is what Data is doing in Con. So there's a direct line there.
Now, I interviewed Anthony King a few years ago, and we talked a little bit about Gutenberg. I have zero memory of this, and I refuse to re-listen to that. But if you want to go listen to that and hear from the source, go to that. Andrew, Liz, this is your first time listening and watching Gutenberg, which has you both saw the Broadway production with Andrew Rannells and Josh Gad. I watched both a U of M recording from 2016 and the new Broadway production, and I don't think I love this Broadway production, sincerely. But what did you guys think?
Well, I generally thought it was pretty funny, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is it something I'm going to deeply remember for a decade? I'm not really sure. But I think that the general premise of two guys who are like renting a theater and desperately trying to get a Broadway show made is a pretty good one. And the fact that they just make this absolutely bizarre historical fiction version of this story about a guy that really nobody cares that much about is pretty funny as well. So
I don't know what you're talking about. My college had a statue of Johannes Gutenberg. Don't know why, but they did.
Honestly, the
What?
printing
fuck?
look,
Wait,
folks, the printing press was kind of one of the most important inventions of the millennium.
important.
Just so we're
Yeah.
clear.
does anyone give
I
a
don't know
shit
why
about
I'm needing
Gutenberg,
to
though?
defend the quasi
I'm not
source
to-
material here, but I just
Don't defend
just
him.
to make sure you don't get comments. Johann Gutenberg, kind of a important
That's
guy.
kind of
An
like
important
saying
guy
like
that does not deserve a musical.
that's
No.
kind of like saying the
Perhaps.
Wright brothers are not that important, but the airplanes are still very important. Yes.
Perhaps that's a good
Well,
analogy.
also, that plane
Wright
was invented
brothers-
by their sister no one knows about, so thank you
Her
very
name
much.
was Catherine Wright, and most of the Wright brothers stories was made up by the surviving Wright brother who lied
Yeah,
and claimed
because
that he
the
did it
sister
all.
got married and they got mad.
Yeah,
Wilbur,
so
how could
He
you?
lied.
Yeah.
it was
We
Wilbur.
believed.
Wilbur
Oh my
was
God.
the one that lived the longest, so he got to rewrite history. It was slightly incestuous between that entire family, where they made a vow not to get married. It was weird.
Now there's a
Wow.
musical
That's
ready
a
to
musical.
be made.
No,
Yeah.
because the only premise that you have is like Wilbur made it up, so you get to have free reign with whatever could have happened.
True.
Yeesh.
Sorry, back to Gutenberg. Liz,
I thought it was pretty funny. That's
Okay.
my overall take.
I enjoyed the premise of it. I thought it's inherently fun. It's just two dudes from New Jersey who just wanted to write a musical because they're buddies. Like, that's funny on a base level. Some parts of it felt a little inside baseball to me. Like, not to bring up baseball again, but like, there's some stuff that's like very like, if you know about Broadway, you'll get the joke. But if you don't know a
We have
lot,
fucking baseball podcast now.
I like baseball. Thank you very much. I actually like sports.
sure.
I do. I go to a lot of baseball games. But there's parts that's like very inside baseball, very like that kind. But I thought it was overall funny. Besides the stuff that didn't age super hot, like I
Well,
thought it
a
was
lo-
decent. It wasn't like the best thing I've ever seen, but like I enjoyed the experience of it. You know?
Well, and just we'll touch on this later, but there's so much stuff that was cut that aged so much less well.
Oh, good.
We're not talking
Good.
about totally vile humor, but let us just say edgelord.
Yeah.
2006 edgelord. So what
Oh.
survived is still pretty tame comparatively.
Oh,
it's a little
good to know.
toothless, if you ask me. It
Yeah.
feels Disney-fied, not just because we have Josh Gad, king of Disney at the moment.
He sounds like
as-
Olaf through 3/4 of this production. I swear to God, he sounds
Yes.
just like Olaf, and it bothers me. I hate it. I hate it. It makes my skin crawl.
So Brent, I know you saw this live on Broadway. Out of curiosity, who is your producer?
Oh, it was Josh Groban.
Okay,
Took me a second to remember.
that would have been
Damn,
pretty
Josh
neat.
Groban.
Josh Groban, yes.
In the bootleg that we watched, it was Annalee Ashford, his co-star from Sweeney Todd. So it all ties together. I struggled with the Broadway recording a lot. Like, I was like, man, am I gonna have to tell Brent I don't like this show? Literally, it took me a couple watches, and I just felt disingenuous. It felt a little try hard. Maybe it's just because it's Andrew Rannells and Josh Gad, and I have too much baggage coming in with them, and it's hard for me to take them seriously as up and comers wishing the best. And the fact it doesn't translate the way that Hedwig did to a Broadway theater, where you. But then you wonderfully this afternoon sent me this video of the U of M basement performance, and you claimed that really captured the spirit of it, even in the comments of those videos. And then I got it. Then I totally got this show. It really struck home for me, and I was like, this is the way it should be. This is where it feels sincere and genuine and charming. And
Yeah.
So this is a basement show. This is like a punk rock.
Yes.
College basement.
Oh.
I was trying to think of think of the most succinct way I could put it, and I would say if you're performing it in a space that's too big to read the hat, you're doing it wrong. And I
yes.
couldn't read what was on the hats from where I was sitting in the Broadway theater. And obviously that's a microcosm. That's not the only issue, but that I think portrays the kind of the issue with doing it in a Broadway setting.
It's a very weird show to put on Broadway,
Yeah.
especially since the premise of the show is that they're not on Broadway.
Yeah, they're supposed to.
Exactly.
Like, they have to talk around the fact they rented a Broadway theater somehow, even though they have no
So
money.
we just rented a
We just
Broadway
rent-
theater.
My daddy's rich. Like, where did you get
Yeah.
this money?
Well, they
If your
had to
daddy's
find
rich, why aren't you a Broadway writer already?
right. They had to find a way to make this very basic two-man show into something that could justify a Broadway ticket while not totally changing the premise. So, like, the lighting was actually pretty decent, even if it kind of had like a silly, slightly clumsy vibe. But there was a three-piece band instead of Charles, who in the original version is just Charles.
Piano.
Maybe they changed the name based on the production, but one pianist, and it was tough. And like, to your point, Jess, about Andrew Rannells and Josh Gad, it kind of felt like, when they did The Odd Couple with Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane, not long after they did The Producers, it's like,
Yeah.
you're going to see The Odd Couple, but really you're just going to see Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane. And in the same way, it was harder to sort of take in these characters for who the characters are, because you're just going to see them. And the way they hammed it up was, of course,
Yeah.
what they should have done for general audiences. But for me, knowing the original vibe of the show was like, it was tough to accept the differences.
This is the pop punk version of the punk
Yeah.
show.
Yes.
I think Andrew Rannells handles it a lot better than Josh Gad. This is Josh Gad's really first show on Broadway since Book of Mormon over a decade ago, which is, you can tell who's been in this world and kind of understands how to work a stage more, where Josh Gad feels very much like he's hamming it up because he's a little bit floundery. He feels a little lost up there, and I don't think he's untalented. I think he's just more used to the film world at this point, and this return to stage was just kind of, not as well achieved. And I've noticed this both in clips and in his demeanor on the late night shows that he's now on, where he just seems like really over this.
Yeah.
Now I wish I saw one of these basement shows.
Yeah, I want to see that.
It's neat. They're on YouTube, and it's just two earnest kids. Honestly, they should have a cap, because also Randall's and Gad are in their like late 30s, early 40s, so it doesn't quite hit the same way as like a bunch.
They're not really up and comers so
Yeah.
much as like they failed at this point.
Well,
you
now
know?
to
It's
be
like
fair, like I think it can work with
Yes.
like maybe 20 somethings, but I think Jeremy Shamus and Christopher Fitzgerald were probably mid 30s at the time, and it really worked. It just like, they play these two clueless guys who are like excited, but imagine if somebody really has worked hard to make their driver's ed class entertaining. Like, and they're trying to make summer school fun, but it's like, it can't escape what it is. Whereas Reynolds and Gad, the kind of fun they were having was Josh Gad and Andrew Reynolds having fun,
Yes.
and not these two people failing to understand how they're coming off.
Yeah. Also, Fitzgerald was 34 at the time.
There you
He
go.
was in this, so.
Yeah.
Jess, you're wrong.
I
Jess
am
was
wrong.
Jess was wrong.
Fucking start a
You lost the
tally.
trivia.
Start a
Hashtag
tally
Jess
of all
was
the
wrong.
times I'm wrong, and you'll run out of space. Let's be clear.
But Jess, you picked up on something from them being younger, which was you bought that they could be that clueless. You bought that they
Yes.
could be kind of charmingly oblivious to themselves.
And it feels the same way as like Dear Evan Hansen, the movie, versus on stage, where if it's a young kid, you kind of lean into like, oh, they're just kind of earnest, and that earnest works for them. But as soon as they're older, it feels weirdly manipulative, and
Yes.
it makes you feel a little less willing to take it at face value. That being said, I struggle a lot with comedy musicals, specifically ones like this that are like comedy with a capital C, where they don't ever try to actually have a heart, which is one of my favorite things about Con is the heart and the overall emotional core that it does give you throughout. And this, I just kind of felt like even the stuff that is supposed to be emotional cores are jokes. And for a 90-minute show, I would have accepted that. For a 2-act, 2-hour show, a little less so. It gets a little exhausting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, the emotion in the original was there, but it was understated.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it's hard for me to know because I didn't see it. I didn't see this new version fresh.
Right.
But it felt like they were trying to thread it through to earn the ending more. Whereas sometimes if you're in a tiny space with a very low-tech show that's mostly jokes, it's like a little bit of difference. Like when they use the contraption that makes one person holding up a dowel with other dummies on it look like they're more than one person dancing.
Yes.
That is like a huge special effect when there's no other special effects. And a little bit of emotion in the original went a lot more of a way. I will say, they're not going to probably release a bootleg of the Broadway version, but the way it ended, which y'all can tell me whether to spoil it or not, but
Spoil it.
So, okay, they write themselves into the show as the writers of the show, but
Mhm.
only at the very end, so they can explain that they wrote it. And, which honestly, like a vibe, understandable. But that being said, they just want to have their dream realized. Clumsy and oblivious as it is, they see this big, expensive Broadway show based on their show happening. And so this Broadway producer, who is technically a character in the show and not in their show and not in the show of them you're seeing, shows up and gives them a big Broadway contract. They all sing together. But then the curtain that they've been in front of opens, or rather the back brick wall of the backstage of this theater rises up, and you see this gorgeous set that looks like the town of Schlimmer in which all of this takes place. And it's beautifully lit. And I really got emotional seeing that, because the idea of finally seeing your dumb little ideas made into something beautiful and expensive is the dream. It is not just the expensiveness, but you know what I mean. Something artists have worked on to make your vision a reality. That was actually really lovely. And one of the few times I went, the budget of this and the additional special effects and production values of this have a huge upside here.
I can see that, and I can concede all of those things. Now it's time for Brent Black's Edgelord Corner. Throw a little.
Oh God! What was so offensive? Because
what was offensive?
I mean, clearly there's a lot of jokes about illiterate people,
Okay.
which maybe is a little
that
mean,
was a little
but
weird.
that's like,
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny the ist that they'll keep and the ist that they won't. Ableist, fine. Racist, that's gotta go. So I want to just
the illiterate can't tweet about you.
right. Oh God, Jess.
Well, Leah Michelle has a Twitter account. Don't go there.
Maybe not that. I don't know.
All right. So
I've never made Brent
Gutenberg.
blush before, and that was a win for me.
yeah. Okay. So now I really want to just tell your audience, like, while this is somewhat lighthearted, how we're mentioning this, there's nothing. This is going to be a little uncomfortable because of what I'm talking about, but I really did notice these things. So I believe in the Broadway version when they said, they want to make the show important because all the best musicals have something that makes them important. And in our show, and I think they said Nazis.
The
Is that correct?
Holocaust, I think they said.
Well, that's the thing, Jess.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, maybe they changed it because so the original version of it, they say the Holocaust. When I saw it, on Broadway, I think they just said Nazis. And
I think they say
They
anti-Semitism.
say anti-Semitism in the show. They do the fake term.
Right. So in the original, and of course, again, uncomfortable, but edgelord humor, they were like, we need to make our show important, and different shows have different things, like a man with half a face. I don't know. I'm not quoting it well, but then they say, and
That was one of them.
Yes.
that was okay. So it's like, and so what we're gonna do to make our show important is the Holocaust, and like obviously in that kind of edgelord 2006 way, it was
God damn it.
funny in that
Damn.
like, oh teehee, we shouldn't say that.
But it's also true because, I mean, I think in the meta way that a lot of musicals did rely on just the like watching The Sound of Music. It is a jarring experience when you're having this fun romp and then suddenly a swastika appears
Yes.
on screen.
Yes,
That's the
and-
reason.
well, it's
That's the reason I
important.
didn't see Act 2 till I was like 14. Because when I was a kid, I didn't want to watch the back half because of the Nazis.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
I was like, I don't want to watch this, Mom, and I just left the room.
Yeah, a fair number of their jokes you could think of as satirizing tropes,
yeah.
but it's hard in, the way we look at things now. It's like if somebody's laughing at something because they're racist, just the fact that it's a racist trope they're making fun of might not be enough. For instance, there was a character who comes on like, I don't know, like a third of the way into the show named the old black narrator. And all he does
Oh no.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
exactly. And he's got that like magical black person thing where he just talks like Morgan Freeman and randomly has a monologue. In context, it's making fun of that trope,
Yeah.
but it didn't survive because it is what it is. They also use the R word at one point. And let
Oh.
me tell you something that I didn't love about the Broadway adaptation. Making a joke, there's no place for that now, but the shock humor of it in 2006 was effective, even though people at the time even were probably like, oh, okay, that's a little bit far.
Yeah.
But it was a joke. It was meant to be a punchline. And here's where I take issue with the adaptation. They didn't replace it with a joke. They just replaced it with a rhyme that just to get on with the song. And I'm like, it's really important in a comedy show with comedy songs that the rate of the punchlines and the rhythm of where are the jokes and where's the exposition. I'm getting a little bit on my soapbox here, but to just take out where a joke was and replace it with something kind of generic is like, you've now made, there are fewer net jokes in your show. Like, put a different joke there. Maybe they almost didn't want to call attention. Who knows? Another thing that was different is, certain words that are just kind of like not funny and kind of take people to places like, I guess I gave a low key trigger warning before, but like young Monk at one point in the original says Monk is an abuser. which again is kind of like the bluntness of that, I think was funnier in 2006. And now it's like, we just know too much now to think that like played for laughs. And the other one I thought of was in the finale, which is called We Eat Dreams. During one of the choruses, they're like, we'll get our fill while hopeless millions hunger still, we eat dreams. And while on the one hand, really nice use of ill as a triple internal rhyme. Again, we kind of know too much to like guffaw at the hopeless millions hungering. And of course, you could look at that as, oh, these two clumsy, clueless guys are saying that, not realizing, or you could look at it as a satire of how unimportant their problems are because there's worse things, but it doesn't work in 2023. So those are 4 or 5 examples of things that it's good that they cut them, but also in the case of the finale, I don't remember what goes there, but it's not funny. It's just something that isn't what it was.
Yeah, it's
you just take
change.
out a joke because the joke's offensive, but you replace it with nothing.
Right.
And
yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer to me, but again, who knows? Maybe they were, I think, didn't Alex Tippers direct the original one too? So, maybe he was like, look, let's just not call attention to it. The fact that we've changed it. Maybe that was the idea. It felt like that was the idea.
I think that's the idea. And if you put yourself in 2006, 2007 territory, running half down the block is Avenue Q, where a whole B plot is about how funny it is a character has become homeless.
Yes, and a song called Everyone's a Little Bit Racist. Like,
yes, it's a different world. I bet this was fairly tame material back then.
Honestly, it sounds fairly tame compared to some of the stuff that we were going.
Compared to what Randall's and Gad started in Book of Mormon. Like, that is a racist dream, that show.
Yes.
That's a whole thing.
Yes, it is. Was there any changes that you liked, though? Because we're talking about the things you didn't particularly like. I know you brought up that set piece at the end.
Yeah, I mean, there were things that, it was kind of nice to hear a full band do it, even if I thought it was like totally against the spirit of the show. Kind of like, I don't know, like it allowed you to hear maybe how Bud and Doug had always heard it in their heads. And they also kind of tried, I'm on the fence about this next one. They tried to create more of a backstory and create an arc of where Bud and Doug were going so that it would be more satisfying seeing them move all the way from the beginning of the show to the end, and how they, their friendship develops. And also, I guess there was a backstory about a woman who told them, remind me what it is, because I haven't seen the show in a few months, but there was a woman, was she at a senior center or something?
Yes. They were like doing lip syncing services for old people.
And she said that they needed to go and be creative, or needed to go and write something, or
they needed to do something that wasn't a cover. They had to write their own thing.
Right. Okay. So that was kind of fun. But like, I don't know, there were just times where I went, maybe less is more on this. Do we need to know who they are in order to enjoy the meat of the show, which I would argue is just the goofiness of their the goofiness of the show they're writing. And it's kind of like it's almost like they maybe inflated the amount that these characters were being themselves in order to give Andrew Reynolds and Josh Gad more of an opportunity to sort of break the fourth wall and talk to the audience. And also distract from the fact that like the show that they've written is bad. So it gives the audience more to experience them. And I don't know. But I already mentioned the final visual on stage that was the set of their dream show, which was honestly just awesome and a huge surprise. But as far as positive changes, again, aside from the fact that, yes, we should take out the jokes I mentioned. Let me be clear. I'm not lobbying for those jokes and gags. But yeah, again, it's a good show. And even on Broadway, it was funny.
Yes.
They did bits I hadn't seen before. They had fun together and with the audience. But it's hard for me to remember I remember, having not seen it in months, I remembered what they changed right off the bat. Remembering what I liked besides that final set is more difficult because you said the word toothless, Jess.
Yeah.
It feels like they smoothed it over a bit for the average Broadway audience, and that's fine for Tootsie, but it just sort of sanded down.
We need that on a t-shirt.
God.
That's fine for Tootsie.
It's fine for
It's fine for
Tootsie.
Tootsie.
But it just sanded down what made this show special in some ways, and it didn't replace the parts that needed replacing with things that were in the spirit of what made it special.
So basically, they sold out.
Yeah.
I mean, like 10%. 10%.
So you're describing Paramore's later albums in
Whoa,
essence.
that's an interesting analogy.
Yeah.
I don't really know enough about Paramore, and I'm not going to pretend to. I almost pretended
they stopped
to.
doing pop punk a while ago. That's
I
basically
see.
it. Yeah.
Paramore is Paradise.
I do have a question about Anthony King and Scott Brown's probably most famous piece of musical theater writing, and that is for Beetlejuice, which they became a relative success in its own way. How did you feel about that, Brent? Because I know you saw that out of town, and I think you saw it on Broadway at some point.
I didn't see it on Broadway, but I did see it in Washington, D.C. And even though, and by the way, that was the pre-Broadway. So even though, let's be real, they were still figuring out how edgy to be, and they definitely pulled it back before they got to Broadway. That was probably good because I saw it. I mean, if we're going to just be really real about this, certain things happen in history that make the things before them seem quaint. And 9/11 was one, and Me Too was one. And, they started writing the show before that, and you could tell they needed to think through what they were saying. However, that's not really what you asked. I just took it there because that's, I guess, the theme of this podcast.
That's fine.
But okay, so what I really, really appreciated about what they did there, aside from just a generally funny book, is they found a way to make, and this is not an insult, to make a TV dinner of the movie of Beetlejuice. Because TV dinners are not really what they say they are. They're chopped up and reconstituted to seem and feel and taste like the thing you're buying, but they're not really chemically the original thing. They took the movie, chopped it all up, and rejiggered it so that Beetlejuice was on stage a lot more. Everybody had a story and an arc. It made more sense. And they found a way to make it structurally match the requirements of a musical comedy. So I guess TV dinner kind of makes it sound like they're making it something worse, but no, they're making it something that is easier to digest for the genre, and makes more sense for the genre. I thought it was really not, and let me be real, part of it was because I was in the middle of the early part of trying to make a serious film into a musical comedy. So the way that they found a way to adapt it, change it, but ultimately have the spirit of the original and a good musical, damn, I thought it was like really well done.
And I'm one of the few people that think it's better than the original film just on structure alone. It gives my brain the burrs that a normal film structure should, and that movie does not.
It's culty more than it's Scorsese. It ain't, but
no.
Anyway,
no. All right, it's time to compare our opinions to those of the New York theater critics. It's time for previews.
It's time for previews. It's time for previews.
We're going to take a look at a truncated piece of Jesse Green's review. Brent, have you read this review?
I don't think so. If I did, I forgot.
Do you remember, what do you think the New York Times thought of this show?
Oh, he's probably going to say it's fun. They're hamming it up. And it's a little annoying how they're mugging, but ultimately the audience was having fun, and I couldn't help having some fun too. That's my bet.
That is the most. Yeah, Andrew, why don't you give us the review?
All right. So this is Jesse Green's review from October 12th, 2023. Gad and Randall shine as Bud and Doug, embodying their characters with a blend of bluster, insecurity, and conceit that lands every joke effortlessly. Despite the abundance of clever stage business and clearly choreographed hat switching, the relentless barrage of jokes becomes exhausting over the 2-hour runtime. Oh boy. While the show's premise initially hits its mark with humor and satire, the novelty wears thin as the story fails to evolve beyond its initial setup. With a deliberate commitment to maintaining the premise of a low-budget amateur production, Gutenberg the Musical delivers a consistent stream of laughs but struggles to sustain its humor over its extended runtime. While the show's commitment to its premise is commendable, its reliance on familiar tropes and gags ultimately leaves it feeling like just another satire of musical theater cliches. And in their attempt to create a deliberately terrible musical, the writers succeed perhaps too well, resulting in a production that feels overindulgent and overstays its welcome. While Gutenberg the Musical may not win over every audience member's heart, its commitment to its absurd premise earns it at least a confetti shower of appreciation. But that's a really negative review to end with that conclusion.
Yeah. I went on didtheylikeit.com just to like get an answer before you were reading. It's a middle. Like they can't even tell what he thinks.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the
They thought
New
that
York
was a
Times.
middle?
Yeah. Yeah, that was
the
a middle
parts that I
according
was
to
reading
didtheylikeit.com.
Sounded like he hated it.
Yeah, it's
I
not like
mean-
a bad.
But I think we're gonna have to switch hats here. We did not mention the hats, and we have to bring that up. So to interpret each character, they have different hats. I think it's yellow and white hats with a bold font across the brim, or what's that called? The fucking meat part of the hat.
Historically,
The meat
historically, they're trucker hats with a big white foam part of the front dome, like over where
Gotcha.
your forehead would go, and they take a chisel tip Sharpie and write the characters' names they're playing, and it ends up being this huge fun part of the concept of the show, because sometimes they have 4 hats in their hands and have to switch back and forth, or they have a stack of 10 hats on their heads and keep on switching who they are. And again, so when I said if you can't read the hats, you're doing it wrong, it's, so much of it is really, truly, that's the only way you can know exactly who they're being. And so many reveals. At one point, again, spoiler, this dead baby from the joke earlier in the show is revealed just by the hat that says dead baby being there on the ground. And it's funny, but if you can't read it, as I couldn't on the balcony,
Right.
In the Broadway theater, maybe I think punk rock was maybe a good way to say it, Andrew. I think it's just a smaller show.
Okay, here's a pitch I have. Have you ever seen a show at the Circle in the Square?
Yes.
Imagine it there. Imagine this show done there. They make it look like a gymnasium or something like they did for Oklahoma. I think the show is immediately 500% better.
Well, Circle in the Square feels smaller, even if it's bigger, because it's in the round, so you can get everybody closer. I have a thing. I think that doing a show in the round is almost never going to make it better. I think I am a proscenium person as a human being. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
this is shocking to me.
You know what it reminds me of? You ever have that moment where somebody in a PSA or a YouTube video or a commercial is talking at the camera, and then they cut. It's still the same take, but they cut to a view from the side, and now you see them from the side and they're talking still straight ahead to them, but to the side for us. And it's like, who are you talking to? Hey, I'm over here. Are you talking to somebody over my shoulder now? Am I too boring for you to look at? And it's not a good analogy, but in the round, the style of performance changes. And this isn't really what the point of this episode is about, but you asked, and it's to me, I've seen a lot of shows in the round where the other side of the audience laughs because they saw the meat of the gag. And as much as an actor can try to put a joke in their body where somehow it's on their face and their butt, that can actually happen sometimes. Like clowning, for instance. A clown can make a joke with their whole body, but there's always going to be a better side. And so for me, it's not necessarily a huge difference. Stranger Things was in kind of in the round or like a 3/4 thrust. And there weren't a whole lot of things you missed, but I think, I don't know, the form of theater, I think, transforms into something else when you go from proscenium to the round that I don't prefer to direct and I don't prefer to watch. That's just me. Hot take. I don't think everybody should feel this way. It's not objective, but that's my take on that.
I could appreciate that take, actually.
Yeah.
I kind of understand it.
Yeah, that makes less sense to me.
You have less control of what the audience sees if you have a full all the way around audience, you know? So
Right.
You can't physically tell the jokes as well. You can't physically show things as well.
Well, and then there ends up being the expensive seats. At least in New York, there's an expensive seats area, and if you aren't in them, you're like, oh, we're in the ass section, not the face section. Okay.
We get the butt show.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, sometimes that's the best show of all.
That's
Speaking
true.
of butts, how about we go into a mid-show and talk about these butts?
The rounder the better, baby.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt you in the middle of the show, but we've got a shill on you. Today's show is brought to you by the extremely kind donations by our donors over at Patreon. Andrew, what's Patreon?
Oh man, Patreon's where you can go if you want to give us a little bit of extra cash and get some extra content as well.
Brent's on our Patreon, in fact. He's
I
been there
am.
since
Brent is on our
earlier.
Patreon.
He's one of our
Long-time
patrons.
Been there for a
supporter.
while.
Long-time supporter. Yeah.
Yeah, and he might even join one of our Patreon meetups soon. So if you want to
Maybe.
have a quick
Maybe.
conversation with Brent Black in a Discord chat, join our Patreon, maybe.
You want to lose to him in trivia?
Yeah, do you want to
Go
lose
ahead.
to Brandon Trivia or Quiplash?
He gets competitive, he will win.
We'll see. I routinely lose matches and use your words, but this is the mid-show thing, so go take it, Jess.
Our current patrons are Danielle Renix, Justice Stampede, and Cassidy, Monica Throw, Hey Brent Black, Nathaniel Stacey Coombe, Joseph Evans Green, Mary Lou Choquette, John Vidals, Russ Walker, Musical Hell, Emily Gracie, Kyle Summers, Janae C, Student in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, Nothing is Certain Except Beth and Taxes, Thespian, Robert Benjamin, Jessica T, Mitchell Young, Chai Teacup, Chris Marcotte, Kiji Marie Anastasio, Trevi Joseph, RJ Noriga, Juliet McLennan, Bjorn Hermans, Toriana Frazier, Sammy, The Adequate Amount, Jacobson, Kaylee Blazier, Cinemageddon Reviews, Villainous Miss, Sophiana Lee, The Omega Geek, Paige Pearson, Manny Wargal, Elisa Erdeman, Anna Loskatova, Sarah Den Bleckyer, Evan Balls, Zachary Torres, Rora Mariso, Maura Fairloin, Lisa Elso, Possessed Washing Machine, Puffy Girl, Sydney Hicks, Anna Bale, Billy Clifton, Gold-plated Kiki Mora, Julia Baldersditter, and Hut Mud Butt. They all give us some financial support here at Musicals of Cheese, and I said some of their names wrong intentionally. See if you can figure out which ones.
Can I just tell you, Jess, as a recovering podcaster myself, it's so
Yes.
awesome, and I say this with no ass kissing. No, I'm serious. It is so awesome you've built this community of people that is enough that you have to do that terrible long list of their names. That's like really cool. That's
It
really
is
cool.
lovely, and I love doing it. And sincerely, apparently people listen and they can tell who left, and then they feel sad because it ruined the flow. Like I've gotten that message on Twitter, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, X left." Blah, 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 blah. And
Where
I'm
did
like,
Hairball Bussy go? Oh man.
someone change their name to that on Patreon, please. Hairball Bussy coming at you.
We have somebody right here who could do it.
Oh, Brent.
No. I can't call myself Hairball. That's illegal.
How about we talk about these songs? So, here's the other problem with comedy musicals. Like, a lot of the jokes hit in the book, and the songs are mostly about how bad they are. So it's really hard to take them that seriously as pieces of songwriting. Do you struggle with this too, Brent, or is this just a me thing?
I struggle the other way, where I think the level of, oh God, this is going to sound so douchey. The level of craft I try to put in the songs can make it harder to see how funny the show is when funny people are acting it.
Yes.
And And in my case, like, that's why Data is making an AI musical and not just a bad one. So you could believe that it was constructed. But here, yeah, you know, when I first listened to the album, I first heard about it on a podcast called Broadway Bullet, and they did the Jelly Bean song. And I was like, this is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. This is terrible. Just not understanding that in context and with funny actors, it's great. These songs are a hollow shell in which to put funny, silly, clumsy acting performances.
I agree, but in that, none of them really stand out.
You think? Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
I've got some thoughts about that. Jesse.
All right. Fuck. You used my Christian fucking name. We're doing that shit. Okay. Let's talk about the prologue, Schlimmer.
Act 1, Scene 1, Schlimmer, Germany. A German town full of German things like feet and short pants. Gutenberg walks down the dirt streets of this medieval burg and encounters a woman and her daughter on their way to market. They're carrying kraut, sauerkraut.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Gutenberg.
Call me Johann Gutenberg.
Hello, Mr. Gutenberg.
It's Gutenberg. How are you today, little girl?
Oh, as happy as I can be, considering I can't read.
Another woman throws open her shutters to greet the morning. She dumps her stinky chamber pot, and suddenly the town of Schlimmer is alive. Not alive like a monster, but alive like a town.
It's nice to live in medieval Germany in the beautiful town of Schlimmer. We all get along in perfect harmony.
I'm a beef fat trimmer.
Hey!
The beef comes in all white with fat. It leaves a good bit slimmer.
We're just drunks coming home from the bar in the beautiful town of Schlimmer.
I think this song is probably the closest thing to like an earworm. The one that gets repeated a lot, the one I think about when I think of this show is really the Schlimmer number. And it's a very pointed parody. And I think those tend to be very effective at being memorable.
I think it's fun. I think it also establishes the way in which it's going to be funny by being bad. Like, we all live in medieval Germany in the beautiful town of Schlimmer. We all get along in perfect harmony. And there's this one guy and he goes, I'm a beef fat trimmer. And his hat says beef fat trimmer. And it's like, from a lyrics perspective, it's like, yes, the first draft itis. Yes, I've seen this before. Yeah, no, it's fun. And they switch all the hats at the end. And yeah, it's great. It's a great way to be introduced to the characters in the show and also the style of writing they're going to do.
Now, you and Brent, you and I are writers in that way where we've been in this position where we've had really shitty first drafts. Andrew and Liz, I'm not quite sure in the same vein you guys play around in that territory very much. Did the jokes of like things like the spoken dialogue being like, what do you guys want to do? It's not like we can read. Does that hit? I guess it does hit for you if you're laughing right now at just remembering it.
I mean, the dead baby thing got me right away,
stupid.
and it shouldn't have got me right away. Like, actually, me.
How did we talk about the edgelord humor and not mention the dead baby?
Yeah,
thing? That's
like
Well, because they kept
peak
it.
2000.
It
They
made me laugh.
They did keep it.
The dead baby thing is probably the funniest thing in the show. Like,
And the thing is,
you would say
it's
that.
one of the
Virtue
best.
that.
It's a great example of writing, the way that they introduce it, because if it were written a little bit differently, it wouldn't be as funny, but they go, and in the middle of the room, lying perfectly still, without moving, is a dead baby. And like, if they just said, there's a dead baby on the floor, not as funny, but like, somehow, the writing of that, like, and it shows you, actually, that the writers of the real show, not Bud and Doug, really know what they're doing.
And just the fact, I think it's funny because the idea of an artistic, like, how do we make reading a really life and death situation? Oh, we make it that this baby died because they couldn't read the difference between medicine and jelly beans. Like, that's the joke I feel.
God.
We really started
It's
negative
important-
on this show, but like, I'm glad we're laughing at the good, funny parts of it
Yeah.
now. Because
No, it's great.
I'm not
No, it's
down
great.
on it. I love this show. I truly do.
Yeah.
I just don't think the Broadway version.
Right.
I'm hoping it gets more eyes on it, and a lot of local productions will start popping up, and a lot of smaller places, and maybe it has another off-Broadway run where I think it would live a much better life. Is my honest opinion.
The question is, what draft would they do if it's not on Broadway? Some third Franken draft? That would be my recommendation to them, and I'm sure they'll ask me. But
You gotta cut the right stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
Keep the right stuff.
Keep the dead baby.
Oh, yeah.
Have you looked at MTI's productions for like Into the Woods and stuff like that, where they give you optional choices? You could either do James Lapine's directed version of the second Broadway revival, where we got some new songs, you got some less good options, new lyrics and all that, or they give you the original option and you can do both and license both of them equally.
I didn't know that. I'm trying to license Con in the next year or two and thinking a lot about just like high school versions, like basically like the PG version and the PG-13 and then the PG-13 with the F-bomb, that's really interesting though. And yeah, no, that's we should talk more about that because I don't look at a whole lot of catalogs for theater licensing and I didn't realize that they're that clear about it sometimes.
They are fairly, but there is some like good creative work that comes out of theater licensing. I don't know if you know Kevin Murphy and Lawrence O'Keefe's story with Heathers.
Did they do Reefer Madness too?
They did.
Yeah. But I don't know about Heathers though. What do you mean?
Heathers, they had to adjust the script to fit a high school audience, so that obviously removing the swears. And they found one song called Blue, which is like an upbeat, goofy song about two guys trying to date rape a woman, more or less.
Yikes.
It's yikes in the context of the story, but it is. So they changed the context and wrote a whole new song, like maybe just to make it for more kids. And they're like, they like this song better. We're going to just put this one into the official version of the show now. So in the act of trying to make something for kids, they're like, no, this is just better for the overall narrative. So creative barriers help.
Yeah, well, I find that amateur productions and smaller productions are going to do what version they like. My university did a Franken version of Chess, which God knows there's probably 8 versions you can license in whatever catalog it's in because they've rewritten it so many times. But yeah, they did that. And in Grease productions often, you can probably license a more movie-like version of Grease now.
Yes.
But for those listeners who don't know, Grease, the musical, did not have a good number of the iconic song moments from the movie, nor the book moments, nor I don't think Sandy was Australian. Maybe she was. They changed a lot of shit, is what I'm saying.
And
but
Grease Lightning is sung by Kinnicky because it's his fucking car that they're singing about.
Right. And so, yeah, like I've actually heard a story. My girlfriend, who's a musical theater actor, told me about a production of Grease where a drama teacher didn't realize that Danny didn't sing Grease Lightning until the Grease Lightning blocking rehearsal. Like it was kind of like because they didn't cast a Kinnicky that could like carry Grease Lightning, and it was
Good Lord.
a Grease cluster.
His brain is bigger than my brain. He can spell and count by 2s. He's so smart and good at stuff, and all I have is boobs. 'Cause I was raised to milk a cow and sit upon a stool. And cows, they never ask you much. No wonder I'm a fool. There's no school, and I am dumb. I am dumbstruck every time he says my name. Helvetica Gummistiefel. Helvetica Gummistiefel.
I Can't Read is probably the funniest, like, kind of I want-ish song.
True.
Well,
Yeah.
I Can't Read actually has some cleverness in it.
All right, let's
she's-
go.
Well, because she sings, she says I can't read, but then you find out that she's always saying, I mean, there's something more than that. I can't read him. He's all Greek to me. And then later, I don't know if they kept this, but after she does that gag where she's always saying more than I can't read, if you'll just let her finish the sentence, young Monk in the original version just came on going, I can't read. I can't read. He didn't like finish the concept of it. Anyway, I can't read is fun. I love the Act 1 closer. Tomorrow is tonight.
Yes.
It's a history and future fight. And they like Alex Timber.
Scene 8, the rooftops of Schlimmer. Gutenberg stands straddling a chimney. Smoke billows up around his face. When I got out of bed today, history was a lot more boring than I thought in a different way. Now the bird of inspiration soaring. Look at these hands. They're attached to a normal man. A normal man will probably change you well. Tomorrow is tonight. It's a history and future fight. Tomorrow is tonight. Monk arises from an adjacent chimney. He is surrounded by bats and fire. Today I killed the future. Now my badness knows no bounds. My plan unfurled to trick that girl. Now the bird of inspiration's on the ground. Splat! I crushed his dream. It don't change the world, the dumb machine. At least my modest monk is still in town. Tomorrow is tonight. It's a history and future fight. Tomorrow is tonight.
Alex Timber took this gesture from the original that like shows, I wish I could show you not on the Patreon video, but where you like kind of punch and twist your other hand to make it look like history and future are fighting, but it's just this wonderful movement that just worked well enough that unlike almost anything else in the show, they kept it from the 2006 version. I also love Monk with Me. Monk with Me could be...
That's a great villain number.
Tell me, Mr. Johann Gutenberg, you ever thought about becoming a monk?
I did once. It seemed pretty boring.
No, Johann Gutenberg. Monking is power! Monk with me. Come live here. I think you'll like it. I've got a cat.
Aww.
Plus, there's food. Delicious loaves and fishes. Here, taste that.
I don't know if I can stay and dine. Somehow it don't feel right.
Monk with me. Try this on. It's a monk robe. Don't that feel nice?
Monk.
It's real silk from China. There's nothing finer. It's worth the price.
I want it.
Then monk with me, my friend. Yeah! We're monking for God now. Monk with me, my friend.
My brain is torn. My heart's confused. I wonder if I'm being used. I only want the world to read. Can I still do that, Monk?
It's better if the world can't read. God is what the people need. I'm saying that God could be we. Oh, Gutenberg.
Like, if you look, that's at least good enough if you rewrote the lyrics and gave it a rock arrangement. That's at least as good as stuff Wildhorn has done in his actually popular musicals.
Throw a rock.
No, I'm saying like that tune could have been in something at least as prominent as
yes. Jekyll and Hyde.
Jekyll and Hyde, you know,
Bonnie and Clyde.
Jekyll and Hyde, Bonnie and Clyde.
He needs to do a third one because Death Note
How
doesn't
did he
rhyme.
do this?
Prince of Tides. Oh my God, that's it, Frank Wildhorn. That's how you'll come back.
That's his trilogy. He's remaking a
The
Barbra
comeback.
Streisand movie.
I was gonna say
Frank
Princess.
Wildhorn.
I was gonna say Princess Bride, but don't you fucking touch that, Frank
Now
Wildhorn.
that you spoke that, it's gonna happen.
Someone
No.
is
It's gonna
doing a
happen.
Princess Bride musical, and
Well, didn't Adam Gettle write a lot of one and then couldn't agree on the money split with the original author of the book? I really hope I'm not telling tales out of school or making shit up, but I think I heard that.
Okay, I remember he was involved at one point, but I know there's like another version coming out, and David Yazbek, from the
from everything. Full Monty, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Tootsie,
the Band's Visit,
Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. I've never heard of him.
I don't know if he'd be my choice for that, but I don't know who would be either.
Well,
Brent Black.
Princess Bride would be fun. I usually think almost every story is a bad a bad property to adapt for a musical. That's my downfall, is not accepting that it could be. The irony being, Wrath of Khan's a terrible property for a musical, but I think I don't know. Stranger things have happened. And Stranger Things has happened.
You beat me by it for a second. Brent.
Also, I'm sad to say there hasn't been any updates about this Princess Bride musical since March of 2019. So
I think the pandemic killed it.
Be patient.
I will
talk about my favorite song, which is the finale, which is why I couldn't pick a song early.
What is it?
Eat Dreams.
We eat dreams.
I love We Eat Dreams. I think it's just so fucking stupid.
And often no one's there to hold you when you cry.
So those who hope must close their eyes
and trust a brighter future lies in dreams, where our little lives are rounded with a sleep. And while the emptiness within us may be deep, we'll get our fill, while hopeless millions hunger still. We eat dreams. We eat dreams.
I eat them too.
We eat dreams.
I eat them too.
We eat dreams.
We all eat dreams, don't we? Come on. Look at the person sitting next to you. They eat just as many dreams as you do. They're delicious. So don't just sit there. We want you to sing along with us. We're going to sing We Eat Dreams, and we want you to sing We Eat Them Too. Okay? Here we go. We eat dreams, we eat them. Come on, everybody. We eat dreams, we eat. Okay, now just the guys. We eat dreams, we eat them. Come on, guys, you can do better than that. Okay, just the girls.
We eat.
Good. Okay, now just Broadway producers.
We eat dreams.
I eat them too.
Oh my God.
Well, Brent, you said it was different in previous productions where that just kind of comes out of nowhere.
Well, yeah, in previous productions, it really is like, what? Because they just go like, we eat just as many dreams as they do. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? But it goes along with the original, like the randomness of the original, whereas they try to thread through and establish the notion of eating dreams as a concept before the finale. But in both versions, I will say, this show, like any good musical comedy, like, by contrast, any good drama, thriller, thriller, or tragedy has laughs in the right places to round it out. Mm-hmm. And this has some heart in the right places. And the music of We Eat Dreams, where our little lives are rounded with a sleep. It's one of those things where the lyrics aren't really what's got the heart there. The music just has something intimate and warm in it. Almost like a little bit of Christmas in it that really is very nice. And it was nice when it was nice on Broadway. It was nice, off Broadway. But I see what you're saying, Andrew. It's funny and it's random, but I feel like there's something in it.
That's what I like about it. It's like it's got the wholesome sound, but they're selling you on the fact that they eat dreams, which is just it just sounds like something a demon would do.
It's so weird. It's so weird. Yes.
That's what Freddy does, yeah.
I don't like when something that feels pure, and I think the original version feels pure, kind of becomes sanitized. I felt that way kind of with Be More Chill when that came to Broadway, and I'm just like, this is just a less good version of the thing that I liked. Do
you mean pure or do you mean real?
Yeah.
What the fuck is the difference?
Pure, to me, it makes it sound like it is squeaky clean.
Yeah,
like,
pure sounds sanitized.
I walked into an Apple store.
Jess, do you mean fully Jess, do you mean fully true to what it is and of a piece with itself?
Yes. And this feels like it's trying to be a piece to market. Like a piece to promote on the Colbert Show. And that just felt like a pure thing, like art for the sake of art. And I love art for the sake of art. That's like one of my favorite things in the world. And this feels much more like a product.
But it's still funny, and it's still a premise that what I like about it is that it takes a show that normally a Broadway audience wouldn't be exposed to in terms of its premise is kind of meta. It is a little bit inside baseball in ways that don't make everybody laugh, but the people that they do make laugh are some of the biggest Broadway fans. And it's a funky kind of, it is a basement show premise. They found a way to put in front of a Broadway audience. And there's something about that like, despite the fact that, like I didn't go see it in previews, but I'm sure some of that fun stuff got cut in previews when they realized moms from Nebraska just aren't loving this, more quote punk rock kind of thing, or this just more edgy or, experimental avant-garde. It's not that wild, but it is on the spectrum a few notches towards something avant-garde than, as opposed to Bad Cinderella, what that was trying to do.
Oh, you're right. I forgot that show existed. Thank you for firing that neuron in the back of my head. My God. I think on that note, what is our overall thoughts and our cheese ratings? Andrew, why don't you get us started here?
Oh, man. I guess now I feel cheated a little bit because I only saw the Broadway one, and I thought it was fine, honestly. I didn't really have any problems with it, but I guess there's better versions that I should have seen. And Jess cheated me out of that experience.
As I usually do. I mean, in all fairness, what I always do for you is I give you the most recent, most updated one. So I'm trying to play fair with the one that the writers want to show off most recently. I feel like it's unfair if I pulled out a rough draft that they're not really proud of from 10 years ago. So that is usually the path I go with you.
Fair enough. So I did actually like it, though, even though I saw apparently the inferior version. I generally think that the concept is funny enough that it got me through, even though it was maybe a little bit long for a full comedy show. And as far as a cheese rating, I'm gonna give it homemade mozzarella cheese because you make it at home. Just like they fucking wrote this show and performed it in their basement.
I see.
C-. All right, Brent, what about you?
Well, to quote the literal prologue of this show, the lights rise on the squalid, stinky bedroom of a friend of Gutenberg. The roof is made of dirty thatch. In the corner, there are rats gnawing on stinky cheese. And the thing about stinky cheese, my friends, is that it's good if it commits to the bit. You don't want cheese that's a little bit stinky. Make it stinky, because then the stinky cheese lovers will love it. But if it's only a little bit stinky, probably not going to be as good for regular-ass cheese normies or stinky cheese aficionados. So,
wait, so when do you stop quoting the show?
Only in the REM cycle of my sleep, Andrew.
I just want people to take the clip of Brent saying very earnestly, "Make it stinky," out of context.
Can't wait.
Oh, so stinky cheese is your cheese rating?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Brent. Liz, what about you?
I can't top that. Okay, I'll try. I didn't mind it. I wish I watched the better version that exists, apparently. But, I'm with Camp Andrew.
Yes, you robbed us.
Google exists. Y'all can do your own research. I don't have to drip feed you everything in your life.
Fuck you.
I will not say that. Anyway.
Drip feed.
Anyway, I liked it.
Just like Saltburn.
Don't remind me. I didn't hate it. I enjoyed the premise was funny. I really like the song in the tower. I might as well go to hell. I like that song a lot. Funny enough. I don't know why. I just do. And I like the dead baby joke a lot. I think about that a lot for some reason. I don't know why. It might ruin my life. We'll see what happens.
Dead babies are just so funny.
I don't know why it's so funny.
Another t-shirt idea.
That's another merch idea. But I didn't mind it. I think parts that could have been funnier, but I think Josh Gad is not meant for this. He just didn't work.
I'm
with
curious
Josh
what his
Gad
understudy
in it,
would have done.
doing Olaf voice every 10 seconds.
Too corporate.
It's too corporate.
Sold out to Disney.
Yeah, it's basically a Disney musical without being a Disney musical. But anyway, I'm gonna give it Hohenheim cheese, which is a soft cheese produced in a round form.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. I'm gonna.
Never mind. I'm good.
No worries. I'm gonna make mine quick. I like the show. I've liked it for a while, but I've never really dove into it until recently. I will say I struggle a lot with comedy shows. I feel like that's a running theme with me. The thing people make fun of me is I don't have a sense of humor, and I like depressing things, and I don't like dancing. So keep your memes coming at me.
Except for that classic comedy, Passion, your favorite.
Hilarious. Laugh riot.
Yes.
So the only cheese rating I can give this is Gouda by Waker Cheese, specifically created by Johannes Waker. So I would call it Johannes Gutenberg. All right. I'll see you next week. All right. Brent, you are, as always, an incredible guest, the perfect yes-ander, and you bring a wealth of information, and truly, we are blessed to have you. I don't think we'd exist as a show if not for your initial support when we were just a little baby podcast.
Oh,
and now that we're
start.
So true. There's a lot of things coming up for you. I want you to promote them all. Please, please, please.
Well, thank you. Okay, so real quick, I am the co-creator of a game called Use Your Words, and our sequel, Use Your Words 2, which is the one I have directed and been more in charge of, is coming out this year. Keep an eye on it by following us on Twitter, not x.com, Twitter at Use Your Words, or on Facebook at Use Your Words. You can follow me on Twitter at Brental Floss, which is dental floss with a BR at the top. But because you're musical theater fans, I will tell you, and this is literally, this is not a thing I've said officially about a musical theater
We've
property,
got an exclusive.
but you literally do. We're working on the studio cast album of Con the Musical, which we hope will be out by the summer. Hopefully we can, get more people to hear it. And so when it comes out, I hope that all of you listening will just give it a little listen, see what you think. And if you hate it, don't tell me. Just don't. But if you love it, tell me. You can also follow Con the Musical everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. That's right, I said everywhere. Oh wait, we're on TikTok too, technically. TikToknically at Con KHAN. Don't get it twisted. Not KAHN, as some people love to do, which made me purchase the URL KAHNthemusical.com just to redirect.
Brilliant.
But no, Con the Musical on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter for all the updates. Thank you for giving me time to talk about that, Jess.
Always. And when it comes out, I would love to do a listening party episode. I feel like that'd be a good, well worth it time to do and go over every track. And I would like to ask you track by track about the show specifically, because I've been involved and I have enough context to do that, I think.
Jess, you're like an OG, like almost like roadie of, not roadie, sorry, a groupie of this show. And I just mean that you've been there
the whole
and
cast.
supporting. I'm trying to find the word that means you have showed up, or is it shown up, at more of the developmental steps of this show than I think any other human. And you got to see it off Broadway. So you've really, and I asked you to read new drafts of the script at least a few times. So yeah, you're like knowledgeable about its journey for sure. One of the guiding spirits, you might say.
if you ever do like a proper talkback, I would be honored to host that. And that's literally the that's as far as I would like my involvement to be.
As long as people like me in the audience scurry out the second that the applause happens, because they know how terrible talkbacks are.
Talkbacks are wonderful. I love them.
They can be, for sure. There's always that one guy in the audience that goes, I grew up in this one place, and what I thought about this was this, and so to that end, I also... And it's like, they tell you their life story and forget to ask a question, and it doesn't have anything to do with... Anyway, I'm ruining the idea of a talkback. Jess, that would be awesome. Let's do it. How about we do it moderated? Online and moderated.
Yes, sir. That would be lovely. You are, as always, a wonderful and you are the unofficial fourth host of this show. Honestly,
well, thanks.
You've always been like the bequeathed choice if I somehow died. Which
the Dauphin, if you will.
They keep trying to kill me, but they haven't done it yet. Speaking of people trying to kill me,
Yeah,
thank you guys for listening. Please follow us on iTunes and Spotify at Musicals with Cheese. We're on Twitter at Cheesy Musicals, Patreon Musicals with Cheese, Instagram Musicals with Cheese, YouTube page Musicals with Cheese, Patreon only podcast, Patreon with Cheese. It's starting up probably. Email us at musicaltheaterlives@gmail.com. Our keeper of the cheese is Juliet Antonio. Brent, give us some ASMR for Juliet.
Hey, girl.
Bravo. This show is edited and produced by Andrew DeWolf, and I think he's doing a fantastic job. Thank you to the Broadway Podcast Network for having us on the platform and for not kicking us off for making fun of the illiterate. All right, anything else we have left to say before we wrap this on up?
Jelly beans, man.
Jelly beans. They'll kill your baby.
They fucking will, too.
Just don't forget, you can find adventure and greatness at your local library.
Perfect. We'll see you next time at Musicals with Cheese.
Bye.
Sing for us.
We eat dreams, I eat them too. Now just the women, we eat dreams, I eat them too. Now just the guys, we eat dreams, we eat them too. Now just the Broadway producers, we eat dreams, I eat them too.
Josh Robyn.